ओम सदाशिवसमारंभां शंकराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ओम वक्रतुण्डमहाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभ निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणी विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। So we were looking at the Veda as a means of knowledge, and in fact I tried to answer the question, are the Vedas scientific? Because this word scientific or even science is being very loosely used by many people, even some celebrated gurus, I think. So whether the Vedas are really scientific as per our tradition itself, we have to first see. So that's what I quoted from the Rigveda Bhashya Bhumika. That means it is the introduction to the commentary on Rigveda, the traditional commentary written by Sayanacharya. So the important thing here we have to understand is, how do we look at the Veda? We look at the Veda as a means of knowledge, as a source of knowledge for things which cannot be known through Pratyaksha and Anumana. Pratyaksha means what? Sense perception. And Anumana is all types of inference and other means of knowledge which is generally available. What we call as Laukika Pramana. Laukika Pramana means the means of knowledge which we normally use in the worldly affairs. Okay, let us say. So whatever knowledge is not available through all of these things, only we are trying to get from the Veda. That's why Veda itself is Veda. That's what Sayanacharya is saying. So what is the implication of this? So the implication of this is, we are looking at Veda as an independent means of knowledge. Like how your eyes are a means of knowledge to know color, how your nose is a means of knowledge to know smell, correct? Any kind of fragrance. How your tongue is the means of knowledge to know taste. How your skin or all over the body, there touch also, you know, correct? It's a means of knowledge for that. And how your ears are a means of knowledge to know sound. Now all these things reveal to you something unique. If what your eyes are revealing is also revealed by your ears, what is the use of ears? Ears are useless, correct? Ears also are revealing to you color. Eyes also are revealing to you color. What is the use of ears there? Ears are useful because it is revealing to me sound, which only the ears can reveal to me, correct? Eyes are revealing to me certain things which only eyes can reveal. Like that, each means of knowledge is useful to me because it is revealing to me something which is unique, something which is not available otherwise. That's what we call anadhigatam, that which is not already known or knowable through other means of knowledge only. I am knowing through a particular means of knowledge. That's why it is useful to me. So if Veda is scientific, means what is science? Science can be defined in various ways, okay? But largely science is about trying to know the truth of the objective world, about the world we encounter as an individual. So it is mainly based on measurements and certain laws, you can say. Scientific laws are there, theories are there, and it has something called a scientific method. Okay, even school children should know this. There is something called a scientific method. Now, what is this scientific method all about? The scientific method means that I give a hypothesis. Initially, I say something. This is what I am proposing. This is my theory. Should be falsifiable for it to be accepted as a scientific hypothesis. That means you should be able to either prove it as right or wrong by designing certain experiments. So this is how the scientific method works. The scientific method means you have to propose a falsifiable hypothesis. Then whoever is proposing that, they themselves can design experiments or other science, and they either prove or disprove that hypothesis. And that's how scientific knowledge is gained, you can say, or discovered. Now, whatever the Veda says is not a hypothesis. It is not falsifiable, in fact, understand that. So that is why Vedas do not, whatever is there in the Veda as a body of knowledge, it is not as per the scientific method, it is not arrived at, first point. And science itself is nothing but enhanced perception and inference. So it is only whatever body of knowledge we have gained using the Laukika Pramana, or the means of knowledge which are generally available to all of us in this world, the sense perception and inference. Using that only science as a body of knowledge has come about. But by definition, Veda is something which is revealing to me things which are not available through science. That is why it doesn't make any sense to say Vedas are scientific. So I want to make this point very clear. So Veda in fact should not be scientific for it to be useful to us. Let me repeat that, because if Veda is scientific, I will as well go to some science university and learn science, correct? Why should I then spend my whole life learning the Vedas? I would rather go with scientific knowledge. So that is the important point. But here one question was raised after yesterday's class. So one question is what I thought that our ancestors, our rishis are all, they were highly knowledgeable. They had advanced knowledge. Now you are saying Vedas are not scientific. How do we reconcile this? Okay. This. See, our rishis having certain knowledge, nobody is denying that. Okay. In fact, they did have advanced knowledge compared to any other civilization at that time. And the knowledge they had, how they gained it again is a certain mystery is there. See, even if you take Ramanujan was a great mathematician, most of us know. Many of which are yet to be proven. In fact, there are some PhDs are happening even right now. They are trying to prove Ramanujan's theories. He just wrote a lot of theorems. In fact, he said that his Ishta Devata came in his dream and revealed to him these theorems. So that is how, see, the Rishi knowledge is not really arrived at by any scientific method or through any hypothesis or anything like that. It was revealed to them and they had a certain knowledge. You don't have to say it is science to prove that it is valid. So this point only I am again making. Many people, by saying that Veda is scientific, what I think really they want to mean is whatever is there in the Veda is valid. validity and scientific, they are confusing. They are two different things. One has to understand. Not everything arrived at using scientific methodology and what is called as science may be even valid. In fact, scientists themselves disprove many of the previous scientific theories. They bring about new things all the time. And also, not all traditional knowledge which is arrived at not using scientific method, okay, they are all intuitive knowledge, you can say, or knowledge gained by lived experience. Those things need not be scientific, but they are still valid. Understand that validity is different from scientific. So we should not confuse the two. Our rishis had a lot of knowledge, but again, all that knowledge you cannot compare to whatever scientific knowledge we have today also. Whatever scientific knowledge we have today, we have achieved a certain level of knowledge now. They may have had some of the scientific knowledge which we are talking about now, or which is being said as discovered. Already we had some of that knowledge which we can accept that. Okay, but anyway, that knowledge and all is not, either the Vedas have restated them or it is not their primary focus. Understand that. What the Veda wants to reveal or what it is revealing is essentially beyond science, and it is not science or scientific or anything. We don't have to claim that it is science for it to be valid. It is valid because it is an independent means of knowledge. Because we give it a status of a means of knowledge, it is valid. So as I told you, Vedas can be considered as axiomatic in the sense that whatever it is revealing, you can take it as truth and you can take it as a starting point also, and you can develop theories based on that. Okay, that is fine. So that way we can consider them. And we also saw already that Vedas, as I told you, they are all revealed to the rishis directly. The rishis are called mantra drashtaraha, the seers. That's why the word seer is used. They saw the mantra, they did not invent it, or they are not the authors really. They are not mantra kartaraha. They did not create the mantra, they saw them. Okay, that is why even in Tamil also there is a word called parpan. Essentially means seer. So rishis are all parpan, means they saw the mantras, they are mantra drashtaraha. And Vedas are considered to be apaurusheya, not born of human intellect, any one particular human's intellect. In fact, yasya nishwasitam vedaha, like this there is statement in the Veda itself. Means this Brahman, the Sarva Karana, also is the Karana or Veda interpreted in two different ways. Understand this. One is the Vedas themselves, since Brahman, Ishvara, Bhagavan is all-knowing, the Veda as a body of knowledge also is part of that all-knowledge, correct? It is effortlessly the Vedas have been revealed by Ishvara, like how we take a breath. Okay, that is one way of looking at it. Effortlessly, Ishvara has created these Vedas or revealed these Vedas to different rishis. But another way of looking at it is like the breath. How breath is so necessary for us. Like that, Bhagavan uses the Vedas to create the world itself. Like that also it is looked upon. Is that clear? In fact, even in the Brahma Sutra, there is a sutra is there. Shastra Yonitvat, like that. So Bhagavan, when we talk about the characteristics of Bhagavan, One of the characteristics to understand Bhagavan Ishvara, the creator of this entire universe, is what? Bhagavan is the source of the Veda. Shastra Yonitvat means because Bhagavan is the source of the Veda, Bhagavan is all-knowing. He is the creator of everything because he is the source of the Veda itself. Or he is the creator of the Veda. Like that you can look at it. Or it can be looked at, Sanskrit is a nice language. Shastram yasya yonihi. Like that also we can look at it. Through which only Bhagavan himself is revealed. Because Vedas are the means of knowledge which are really revealing to us Bhagavan. I told you Bhagavan cannot be arrived at purely through logic. Okay, you cannot establish that the world is a creation. Then only you can even talk about creator. But even then, whether one creator is there, more than one creator is there, we cannot arrive at it. Purely by logic, we can never arrive at it. That's why Bhagavan himself is revealed only through the Veda. So Vedas now become a source of knowing Bhagavan. Our knowledge of Bhagavan, Ishvara, as the maker and the material, Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karanam, comes only from the Veda. So Veda is the source of this knowledge for us. So in one way, Veda becomes the source of knowing Brahman, Bhagavan. So this way also we can look at it. So Vedas, or we have to say, Bhagavan introduces himself through Vedas as the means of knowledge. That's how we can look at it. Is that clear? Bhagavan introduces himself to us through the body of knowledge called Vedas. And the Vedas are like the breath of Bhagavan. Bhagavan, it is from Bhagavan only. Bhagavan is the first Guru. If you talk about a Guru Parampara, a lineage of Gurus and Sishyas, teachers and students like that, who is the first Guru? Means Bhagavan alone is first Guru. In fact, we start this class with the prayer, correct? Sada Shiva Samarambham. We say that the Guru Parampara is starting from Sada Shiva up to Asmad Acharya, my own Guru. I do Namaskara, then only I start. Or there is another shloka also is there. Narayanam Padma Bhuvam Vasishtam Shaktincha Tat Putra Parasharancha Vyasam Sukam Gauda Padam. Like that it goes. So there Narayana, it starts with Narayana. Whether it starts with Sadashiva or Narayana is immaterial for us. It starts with Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the first Guru. Then only everybody else, all other Gurus, all Rishis who are in the lineage, they are there. So, Bhagavan introduces himself through the Vedas. That's how we look at it. So, it is not born out of any one human being's intellect. This also is a very important thing we have to understand. Okay, now we will go to something new which I wanted to further tell you. This word Shraddha. Now, Shraddha is translated as faith many times, but faith itself is a problematic word because it has its own baggage from other theologies. So we can just stick with the word Shraddha, which is there in all Indian languages, correct, and try to understand that, which will be easier, less confusing. In fact, Shraddha means what? It is normally in Sanskritam it is said Shastra Guru Vakyeshu Astikya Buddhihi. So in the words of the Shastra, the Veda and Guru, because Guru only is telling you what is there in the Veda, right? You have to go to a Guru and learn. That is there in our tradition. In fact, yesterday we had Teachers' Day and all that. Before that we had Guru Purnima also. So Guru is required particularly for certain kinds of knowledge. You are discouraged to study yourself. Self-study is not encouraged. You have to go to a Guru and study. So in the words of the Guru and in the words of the Shastra, you have Astikya Buddhi, it says. Astikya Buddhi means what? Whatever they say, it is there, it is true. Like that, initially at least you have to give the benefit of the doubt. Because many times when you are learning the Shastra from the Guru, whatever they say, you may not understand, or you may think it is contradictory to your own whatever knowledge you have or whatever ideas you have, your own opinions you have. It may contradict all that. But at that time, if you say, no, no, the Guru is wrong, Shastra is wrong, means then you are not going to gain any knowledge. Okay? You will go away saying that Shastra is wrong, let us say. That means you are the loser, in fact. You will not be gaining the knowledge which is available in the Shastra, which is for your own good, in fact, which is for your ultimate good, finally, in fact. You will be the loser. But if you consider, you have to give only a benefit of the doubt. Okay, maybe I am not understanding it properly. Let me try to understand this. Or let me go and ask my Guru different questions, try to clarify my doubts. So you have to have an open mind when you go and study the Shastra. Why I am telling you this is, it is very important, correct? See, we have to look at the Shastra, the Veda, like we give the same status to your eyes. That's all I am asking you. If you give the same status to the Veda as you give to your eyes, then you have Shraddha. Because even on our eyes also we are really having only Shraddha, correct? How do you know that it is really revealing the correct color? There is no other proof for that, correct? Your eyes are reporting it is green, or your eyes are reporting there is water, but it can be mirage water also. But whatever your eyes are reporting, we do not doubt it unless it is negated by a stronger cognition, a better cognition. But whatever is revealed by our eyes, we take it as valid, and on that basis only we are doing all our activities, all our transactions. Our whole life is lived on that basis only. Whatever our sense organs are revealing, we accept them and go along with that. Sometimes it is negated also. Even then, we accept them. In fact, eyewitness is a big thing, correct? Even in law, eyewitness, we say, is important to establish the truth. Like that, can you give the same status to the Veda? Because whatever is revealed by the eyes also, it cannot be proved by any other means of knowledge. Understand that. And whatever the Veda is revealing to you also is a unique field of knowledge. Are you ready to consider that as valid knowledge? If you are ready to consider that, then you have Shraddha. And only if you have Shraddha, you can gain knowledge through a pramana. Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. Like that Bhagavan Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita also. Okay. So only if you have Shraddha, you can gain knowledge. Or even Chandogya Upanishad also says, Acharyavan Purusho Veda. The one who has an Acharya means essentially you have Shraddha on your Acharya, and then only you can gain this knowledge. Both are important. You have to give the status of a valid means of knowledge to Veda, then only you are an Astika, in fact. Even previously I have talked about this. In our tradition, Astika means not, it is not based on whether you accept Ishvara or Bhagavan or a Karta. It is based on whether you accept the Veda as a means of knowledge or not. If you accept the Veda as a means of knowledge, you are an Astika. If you do not accept it, you become an Astika. Okay, you do not accept it. So accepting the Veda as a means of knowledge is very important. That is what we call Shraddha. And that is also only a provisional acceptance, because the proof of a means of knowledge is only in using it. So let us take a interesting story, small story. There is a person who is blind, okay, from birth, or he became blind in between, let us say, okay, whichever way it is. So he is blind now, and then for many years he has been blind, and now there is a new breakthrough in the medical world, and they say that with a new surgery his vision can be restored. Okay, so this person undergoes this surgery, and then he is there in the ward. His eyes are all bandaged still. Okay, now the main surgeon is coming and wants to remove his bandage and check whether vision has been restored or not, let us say. At that time this person is saying, doctor, first to prove me that my eyes will see. Okay, give me proof. Otherwise, I won't allow you to open my bandage. Because if you open my bandage and I am not able to see, I cannot tolerate that, whatever. It will be too disappointing to me. I cannot take it. I will be heartbroken and I may even get a heart attack. So I don't want to risk that. That disappointment is too much. So now you prove me that my eyes will see. Now if somebody says that, what can the doctor do? That doctor may be the best doctor in the world. All that doctor can say is, the surgery went well, everything looks fine, there is no reason why you should not see. But can the doctor give any proof to that person that his eyes will see really? Unless that person himself opens and sees, then only he will know whether his eyes are seeing or not, correct? The proof of a means of knowledge is only in using it, understand that, because no other means of knowledge can come and prove, because each means of knowledge is revealing something unique, and whatever it is revealing is valid if it is not negated. That's all. So this point is very important. So if somebody says, prove me Veda is a valid means of knowledge, then only I will study the Veda, then only I will follow whatever is said in the Veda, means we cannot do anything. He's an Astika then. In fact, we don't even want to argue with such people, or we don't have any pressure to go and convert all these people or anything. Understand that. It is their loss, in fact. It is like the person who does not want to open his eyes and see means, what will you do? It is their loss. In fact, we even have no problem. We can say, okay, if you are not going to do this in this life, well and good. If you have some punya, maybe next time you always have another chance. So we have no pressure that way, correct? We don't have any pressure to convert anybody. We are not proselytizing tradition. That is important, correct? But if somebody wants to come and know about our dharma, we are always ready to share. This knowledge, this dharma is common to everybody. Anybody can become a dharmika. And those who in fact voluntarily want to know about this and lead a dharmika life are even better than those who are born in this culture in some ways, correct? Because they have taken a conscious decision, they have more commitment to dharma, that I see. So anyway, the point here is we cannot force anybody to accept the Veda as a means of knowledge. They have to show some Shraddha first. And then once they start understanding the Veda and living their life according to the vision of the Veda, automatically you will see that that is the only way which can really make you happy. Because at the end of the day, everybody wants to live happily, correct? Happiness is the only pursuit which is common to everybody. If you really want to be happy, totally satisfied with yourself, then you have to accept the Veda as a means of knowledge and lead your life accordingly. Now that I can say from my own anubhava, my own experience. That is what all others also have said in the parampara. Based on that, you give the benefit of the doubt and you have to start somewhere. And our tradition is a teaching tradition. You can ask any number of questions. If the Guru thinks that you are worthy of this knowledge, you are qualified, then they are all compassionate people. What does the Guru have? In fact, Guru has nothing to gain really. Still, it's only purely out of compassion, care. Whatever I know, whatever is clear to me, I want you to also see the same thing. And I'll make an effort so that you are also able to see it. That's all is there. There is nothing more than that. So what we have to understand is only for those who have Shraddha, we can even really teach. And those who have Shraddha only can also assimilate the teaching. And once they know the truth themselves, it is no more Shraddha. Understand that. Then it becomes Jnanam. It is knowledge. Whatever you know is knowledge. Then that's why Shraddha is provisional, I said. So I hope you understand how important this Shraddha is. It is everything, in fact. Because if it is not there, you will have a starting problem. In fact, you will never even start. So finally, what I want to summarize is whatever is revealed by a means of knowledge can neither be proved nor disproved by any other means of knowledge. This is the important point. The implications of this only we were discussing till now. So the example here is what? The color revealed by your eyes can neither be proved nor disproved by your ears. Similarly, the sound revealed by your ears can neither be proved nor disproved by your eyes. That's how it is. They are revealing to you a unique field of knowledge. Veda also is like this. So, as a dharmika, as a Vaidika, you have to give this status. So, Veda is like one more sense organ. That is the status we have to give. If you are ready to give that status, you have Shraddha and you can gain this knowledge. Is it clear? Continuing, some more questions came actually. People wanted to know more about the Vedic knowledge. Okay, and what are the things which are there in the Veda. So let me also give you some facts here. So till now I have given you the important understanding, let me say, with which we look at all this Vedic literature. Now we will try to understand a little bit about the Veda as a body of knowledge, how it is structured, what is there in that. Of course, in this 15-20 minutes, I cannot tell you what people take 12 years to study, but I'll try to give you some, at least some idea you should have, correct? So, The Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda, like that, the Vedas are actually, you can say, divided into 4. In fact, originally they say Vedas were just one body of knowledge. And 5000 years before, Veda Vyasa, at the start of the Kali Yuga or end of the Dwapara Yuga, Veda Vyasa thought that Kali Yuga, the faculties of human being are not as good as before. Okay, so they will not be able to retain the entire body of knowledge. So we have to now divide it and then give it to different set of people to learn and propagate it. That is why Veda Vyasa divided the Vedas into 4 and then gave it to different rishis. So the Rig Veda is mainly having, in fact, it has the biggest set of mantras in it. Now, when we say mantra Rik, it is called Rik. Rik means what? In fact, Rik itself, the R, I did not put I there consciously because in Sanskritam there is a vowel which sounds R, correct? It is not Ri. Ri or Ru. Sometimes regional variations are there. If you go to Andhra, the R becomes Ru. Okay, they will say Krishna instead of Krishna, in fact. If you go to Gujarat, they make R into Ri. They will make Krishna. But actually that vowel is not Ir or Ra plus E or Ra plus U. Ir plus U. It is not. It is really R. Samskrita vowel R is there. U is the actual sound. R. So this R, then Rik. Now Rik means it is said to meter. There is a chandas, we say. And there are different chandasas are there in the Veda itself. Gayatri is one of the most popular. Gayatri, Ushnik, Anushtup, Trishtup, Jagati, Pankti, like this. Different names are given. Each chandas has different syllables. Gayatri has 24. Anushtup has 32. Trishtup has 44. Like this. And again, in them also there has to be so many long vowels. In this place there has to be a short vowel. In this place there has to be a long vowel. Like that, there are rules are there. So based on those rules only the mantras are there, and they all have swara also. Veda, it is not just some sound, but it is also there is a tone. You have to chant it, keeping that swara also correctly. In fact, Samskrita language itself has something called swara prakriya. When you learn Samskrita Vyakaranam grammar, the grammar is not only in terms of how the words are formed and with what prefix and suffix, what meanings you can get, all those things are part of the language grammar. But not only that, but the swara prakriya also is there. In which tone, with intonation you say, the meaning can change. That is also very important. That's why Vedas have not only been, they have been preserved. The group of words also has not, just the words alone have not been preserved, but even the intonation with which it is chanted has been preserved. In fact, the Vedic chanting is now considered as a intangible heritage of the whole world. UNESCO heritage and all, it is considered as Vedic chanting. And people are amazed how it has been preserved for so many thousands of years without any change. Okay, purely oral tradition. And they have preserved it because they also have different styles of chanting it, or different patha we say. So pada pata means they divide each and every word and learn. Initially, in fact, while teaching, pada pata is what is taught. Then there are other types of chanting is there. Pathas are there. Krama Patha, Jata, Gana is the most complicated Patha. So since there is many different types of chanting, even if there is a problem in one, or if you have doubts, you can always refer to different Pathas, and that's how it is preserved. There is no critical edition of the Vedas. Understand that. That is because Vedic chanting different Pathas. So the group of words which form the Veda as a body of knowledge has been well preserved along with the intonations, the chanting. And Swara is very important. Swara is very important even in worldly interactions, correct? In fact, somebody wrote a book called What is There in Bhagavad Gita. No, the author meant it in a good way, correct? What is there in Bhagavad Gita, he wanted to tell. So he kept the title as What is there in Bhagavad Gita. Now let us say, I say it like what is there in Bhagavad Gita, means the whole meaning changes, correct? That means nothing is there, nothing worthwhile is there. Just by changing my swara, I can say, I can bring a different meaning. That's why swara is so important. In fact, this is, even there is a Purana story here. Okay. So there was a rishi who became angry with Indra and he did a yaga. Okay. And from that yaga, he wanted the enemy of Indra to come out. Okay. So that whatever being comes out of that yaga, some asura, let us say, he will go and kill Indra, or at least defeat Indra and drive him out of the Devaloka, let us say. So this rishi was doing this yaga, this ritual, fire ritual, and he is chanting all the mantra. Then all the devas went to Saraswati and prayed. See, he is doing this. If he succeeds, then we will all be driven out. There won't be any dharma. So what did Saraswati do? She played a trick, you can say. So he said, Indra Shatru Vriddhasva, means what? His intention was to say that, hey, enemy of Indra, may you grow from this fire and now you go and attack. Okay, so Vritrasura is supposed to come out of that fire, Vritra. So the rishi says Indra Shatru Vriddhasva. But in Sanskritam, Indra Shatru is a compound. So Indra Shatru means you can divide it as Indra's Shatru, means Indra's enemy. That is one way of having the compound. Okay, Indrasya Shatruhu. But another meaning also you can give if the swara changes. Okay, Indra is the enemy for whom? The meaning will totally change, correct? Indraha Shatruhu Yasya. Okay, Indra is the enemy of whom? Means then this Vritrasura will die. Because Indra becomes the enemy of Vritrasura if the meaning changes like that. In fact, Saraswati went and played her trick and that the swara became wrong when he chanted that. So the Indra Shatru became Bahuvrihi, as we call in Samskrita grammar. Means the meaning of that, because of swara, became Indra, who is the enemy of this, whoever is going to come, that Asura, may you grow, like that it became. So this story is told only to tell you that swara is very important. And all Vedic chanting, all the mantras have to be chanted with the proper swara. You have to learn it also properly. And Rig Veda is mainly having all these rigs. In fact, you can chant for 24 hours completely. That's what they say. So much is there. And Yajurveda also has a little bit of all this. See, the mantras are all supposed to be there in a portion called Samhita. Samhita is the portion of Veda where all these mantras are there, which are chanted. They are all having a certain meter, and they are chanted with those meters. There are also a lot of prose portions in the Veda. Yajurveda mainly has all these prose portions and also has details how to use all these mantras in different rituals. Okay. And Rigveda had 21 shakas or branches, or they call it recension in English. 21 recensions or branches were there for Rigveda. Yajurveda had 101 shakas or recensions. And Yajurveda mainly has a lot of prose portion, as I told you. Then Samaveda is mainly Rigveda only. Most of the mantras are rigs, but they are sung as a Gana. They are sung, in fact. Okay, Samagana. That's why it is called Samagana. Ha, and all that they add. A lot of. So even in Carnatic music, no, they add because they have to do all this like that. Correct. So like that, even in Samaveda, the rig itself is taken and sung as a Gana in a particular manner. And Samaveda also, recently we arranged for a Samaveda Parayana. They chant for 6 hours every day, and almost one whole week they chanted. Around 40 hours they were able to chant. And everything from memory. They don't look at anything at all. Keep chanting. So that much ability is there for human beings to hold. Okay, our hard disk and all is very low capacity, but some of these Vaidikas, their hard disk has great capacity. They are holding. In fact, if you go to a Vaidika Sadas, they have all this, some kind of a, let us say, conference. Nobody has any books or anything. They will all be arguing, debating, quoting only from memory. If you look at a book, then it is looked down upon if somebody is referring from a book and all that. So that much they all hold in their head. That's how it has survived also. Because even when the libraries were burnt, people ran away and they had it in their head. And they can still preserve and pass it on to the next generation. So 1,000 shakas were there in Samaveda. And Atharva Veda again also has all these different prayogas, even for royal rituals, worldly rituals also, many things are there in Atharva Veda. It also has mantras, prose portion and all that. And very important Upanishads are also there in Atharva Veda. We'll talk about that. So Atharva Veda had 9 shakas. So totally 1131 Vedic shakas were there traditionally. Today, after all these 5,000 years, we have only 10 shakas are surviving. And even this we are struggling to protect now, to preserve. Not many people are coming to learn in the Veda Pathashala because there is no value for the Vedic chanting and Vedic knowledge. So that is a problem. So the sections of Veda, I briefly said that Samhita portion has mantras. They are all set to meter. Then there is a Brahmana. Brahmana here is not a Jati or a Varna or anything. Okay. Brahmana means here that portion of the Veda, which is prose mainly. It talks about how to use all these mantras in different rituals, how to make the altar itself. In fact, here only even some mathematics and all is there. Pythagoras theorem and all is originally is there in the Sulba Sutra. Although it is attributed to Pythagoras, it is not really. Pythagoras was not the first one to talk about it. This is now accepted by most people. So there are Brahmana portion is there, prose. Aranyaka also is there. Means those who in the ashrama, Aranyaka is an important, correct? Vanaprasthi we call them. So they go to the Vana and live retired life and mainly doing meditation, upasana. So Aranyaka has the same fire rituals. Instead of actually doing it, they are all with visualization, they are all converted into different upasanas. And Upanishads are the last part of the Vedas. Mostly they occur in some Brahmanas and Aranyakas. A few Upanishads are part of the Samhita itself. Like the Ishavasya Upanishad is part of the Shukla Yajurveda Samhita. But Upanishads are small, generally they are called Vedanta because they are considered to be the last portion or the last chapter of the Veda, which is dealing with the reality of yourself. Very important subject matter. So like this, the Vedas themselves can be looked upon as Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka and Upanishad. Every Veda has its own Samhita. Yajurveda has a, Krishna Yajurveda has a Taittiriya Samhita, Maitrayani Samhita, like the different Samhitas are there depending on which Shaka it is. Shukla Yajurveda also has its own Samhita. The Shatapatha Brahmana is very popular in Shukla Yajurveda. Taittiriya Aranyaka also is there. Even Rigveda has Aitareya Samhita, Aitareya Aranyaka and all that. Then Upanishads are there in every Veda. Each Veda has some Upanishads. So like this, these are the sections of the Veda. Then Veda Angas are also there. 4 Vedas we said. What are the traditional disciplines of knowledge? What were people studying? In fact, people were studying for years in those days. So in fact, how the Veda Patashalas used to teach is only for 6 months they will teach you chanting of the Veda. Then for the next 6 months, you will learn other things. The allied subjects you can say, Veda Angas. Okay. What are they? Siksha. Siksha means all the phonetics you can say. In fact, the Shiksha Shastram is called the nose and the lungs of the Vedas because if you know Siksha only, you can pronounce correctly. Because pronunciation is everything with reference to mantra. So correct intonation, correct effort you have to give. How much air you give out. What kind of prayatna? There is something called Antara Prayatnam, Bahya Prayatnam and all that. What kind of effort you put within your body, in your throat, in your mouth. How much air you give out. All these things are very important to produce the right sound. So Shiksha Shastram is about phonetics. They are called the nose and the lungs of the Vedas. Then Kalpa. Kalpa Shastram, Kalpa Sutra we say. So every Veda has associated Sutra. Kalpa Sutra, Grihya Sutra like that. This is where, in fact, even in the Brahmana portion of the Veda, even though the rituals are all talked about, it is not very systematically, it is not discussed. That's why the Kalpa Sutras is where different rishis have given out how to do all the Vaidika rituals in your day-to-day life. All the things which we do, our religious practices, they are all coming from the Sutra. That is why each Vaidika, when they introduce themselves, they will also say which Sutra they follow. Because what kind of your marriage rituals, your Upanayana, all the other rituals, right up to the Aparakarma also. The rituals which are done after somebody dies. And after that also all the Pitri Karma, the karma we do for our ancestors are all based on the Sutras only. So Apastamba Sutra is a popular one for Yajurveda. There is a Bodhayana Sutra. Drahyayana Sutra is there for Samavedis. So like each Veda and its Shaka can have a different Sutra. And based on that only, how you do a certain, that's why there are differences. See, there is no uniformity in all the forms which we have. In fact, it is all very diverse because it is all based on different sutras, and you follow whatever is there according to your Veda and your Sutra. So Kalpa Sutras only tell you how to do all the different karma according to your Veda. And they are called the arm of the Vedas because they are about doing all the rituals, correct? It's all about activities. Vyakarana is the grammar. Without Vyakarana, you cannot understand what the Veda says. So they are called the mouth of the Vedas. And Niruktam is the old original dictionary, you can say, or thesaurus. So Yaska is supposed to have, he has collated this Niruktam. The words of the Veda, what do they mean? Etymology also is given for many words. So they are called the ears of the Veda. Jyotisha are the eyes of the Veda, because with Jyotisha only you fix the time for everything, when to do something. Okay, it is about fixing auspicious time for doing different rituals. So it's a very important Vedanga. Of course, through Jyotisha also, we, as I told you, we also say what kind of prayaschitta one can do to mitigate the effects of the papa which is there in our prarabdha karma. Then Chandas are called the feet of the Vedas, because the Veda mantras are all, they are, the basis for them is different meters, correct? And that is again prosody, you can say in English, Chandas. Like I said already, Gayatri, Ushnik, Anushtup, Brihati, Pankti, Trishtup, Jagati, like this different Chandas are there. So these are all Veda Angas. So 4 Vedas, 6 Angas. So 6 Angas they will learn for 6 months. Then again they will learn their Veda chanting for 6 months. And again, so when they finish this Veda, start the Veda again, that is called Veda Arambham. That's what we do as the studies. So the Veda Angas, 10 traditional disciplines. Then Upavedas are also there. Ayurveda, associated with Rigveda, health and medicine, Dhanurveda, archery, and all military technology, let us say, Astra, Shastra, and all we say. Shastra means you hold in your hand and fight. Astra means you leave it like a missile. So that's all associated with Yajurveda, all mantra powered missiles, okay, in Dhanurveda. Gandharva Veda is there, about music and dance, sacred dance, associated with Samaveda. Then Artha Shastra, all economics, politics, administration and all, it is associated with Atharva Veda. So Upavedas are also part of our traditional knowledge disciplines, okay. So 4 Vedas, 6 Veda Angas, 4 Upavedas, 14. Then Upa Angas also we say, 4 of them. Mimamsa means, Mimamsa in English they can call hermeneutics and all they say. That means we analyze the Veda and try to arrive at the meaning of the Vedic sentences. And they have certain way of analyzing it. It's very interesting. So Mimamsa only helps us to arrive at the correct meaning of the Veda. Then only it becomes a valid means of knowledge. Then Nyaya Shastra is there. Nyaya is the one who gives us all our terminology. And also they have a way of doing inference, logic, how to do formal presentation, what fallacies can be there in logic. All these things, Nyaya Shastra, they give us the terminology and categories with which we understand the world also. All that is Nyaya Shastra. Purana Itihasas are there. They give us bhakti. They give us a whole world of rituals and so many practices are there, correct? Religious practices. It is all mind-boggling. It's all in one way some kind of technology, correct? even I am misusing this word, but what I am saying is there is so many ways of doing upasana, or if even somebody's Ishta Devata is there and you want to do something, some kind of worship, so many things are there and it's all detailed out so much. So it is amazing to know all these things. So many things have been there. How they even thought about all these things. Even if you take temple, there are so many rules and all that related to that, how temples are built, how they are maintained, what kind of rituals we do during different seasons. Everything is there. So much literature. Then Dharma Shastras are also there, starting from Manu and so many others are there, Yajnavalkya. And they again detailed description about your day-to-day life, what you have to do, what is your Nitya Karma, and even all other laws with reference to social interaction, or if something wrong you do, what punishment has to be given, or if you do something wrong and what prayaschitta, how can you atone for it, all that is given in Dharma Shastra. So these are all called Ashtadasha Vidyasthana. In our traditional studies, we have this Ashtadasha Vidyasthana. Okay, so I think with this we will stop here and maybe I can take up some questions are there. I think I have actually gone a little bit late, I think. Okay. The Shiva Purana says creation is from Shiva. Bhagavata Purana says creation is from Vishnu. Skanda Purana says, okay, what is the question? I don't understand. But if you say there is no contradiction in all these things, because in Shiva Purana, Shiva is the ultimate Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karana. Okay, Shiva is Bhagavan, Shiva is Ishvara, Shiva is Brahman, the cause of everything. In Vishnu Purana, Vishnu is like that. So there is no problem with all these things. Whoever is your Ishta Devata, that Ishta Devata is the ultimate cause of everything. And you keep that Ishta Devata as the greatest. Okay, there is no problem with that. No. Somebody is asking, it is like proving fire is hot without touching. Fire is hot, you can feel even without touching. But fire is hot is reported by what? By the cannot come and prove whether fire is hot or cold. Okay, somebody is asking, when it comes to Vedas, there are other bodies of knowledge, other alternatives. See, other alternatives are also analyzed and they are proven as illogical. Whatever is illogical cannot be accepted as valid knowledge, or whatever is against established body of knowledge cannot be accepted. So that is why Mimamsa is important, that analysis. So Vedas are analyzed and established as a valid means of knowledge. Is it clear? Why is the Atharva Veda not much spoken about? Means many of the Atharva Vedis are not there. Correct? That is the problem. Very few Atharva Vedis are there. Even the Atharva Veda knowing people now are all Dvivedis or Trivedis, like that. Those who have studied their own Veda, Shaka, and then further learned Atharva Veda. But very few original Atharva Veda people are there near Gujarat and all that. I think they all got destroyed by all these invasions. That is the problem. Maybe they were living in the northwest part mostly, but some Atharva Veda people are there even in Orissa, one Shaka. But I think they just found out some manuscripts and all that. Whether really people are still there who know all that is a question mark. Okay, what kind of Veda we will follow? Develop memory power. Memory power you have to develop means you have to start from young age, I think. That's what. So once you start practicing, then the memory power will come. It is more than memory power, it is more muscle memory also. Memory is not just associated with your brain or mind or anything. It is more, it is there all over your body, in fact. When they chant, mostly it is all muscle memory in the mouth, I think. Even it is the same for me. Even when I am not very attentive, Vedic chanting will go because you have chanted it so many times and it is there. It is part of your whole body, in fact. Okay, I heard that women need not chant Vedas. Is it true? There is a rule that in Kali Yuga, the women do not learn the Vedic chanting. So, of course, the Stri Dharma we have to talk separately. If I have to talk about all these things, we will do that. Okay, but the Vedic mantra rishis, if you see, there are rishikas are also there. Many Rigveda mantras are seen by women, and even in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Shatapatha Brahmana and all, Gargi, Maitrayani, like that, there are women who in fact actively come and argue. Yajnavalkya and Gargi, they have a debate. All these things are there. Okay, but somehow later on, in fact, even in Ramayana, Sita has done Sandhya Vandanam and all that. That means Sita was having Upanayana of her own. But they say that it is all Yuga Dharma. Like that, there is a concept is there. So I will explain that whether it is, whether you can accept it or not, I leave it to you. But whatever is the traditional view, I'll tell you. Yeah, if the mantras are not pronounced properly, like I said, Indra Shatru Vriddhasva became wrong, correct? That's why it is important you learn the mantras correctly. Rigveda Sutras, I will tell you. So, anyway, so I thought today we saw a little bit about the Veda and the allied subject matter. We will now continue with the other things next week. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.